Chosen one, this is the message God has been trying to get to you all week. I want you to pause before you scroll or skip, or tell yourself you will come back to this later. Because everything that brought you here in this moment, the sequence of your day, the way your attention turned in this direction instead of anywhere else, none of it was random. Something arranged this. And the reason I say that with confidence is because of what I am about to show you. This week, the divine made 7 distinct attempts to reach you, not through signs that split the sky, through the ordinary fabric of your actual days, through a pause that was too full of something to be empty, through a waking that felt like it came with a message attached, through a conversation that turned in a direction no one planned, through a song, a word, a moment of unexplained peace or unexplained grief that arrived exactly when it needed to. 7 times. You may have noticed some of them. You may have named them coincidence or stress or imagination. But there is a pattern here that goes far older and far deeper than this week. Elijah knew what 7 felt like. He stood on a mountain, emptied of everything, and sent someone to look for what he had asked for 7 times. On the 7th look, there it was. That pattern is alive in your life right now. God has been reaching. He has not stopped. And this message, right now, is the 7th made visible. Receive it. Stay with me. But before we go any further, I want to tell you something about where this message is going. By the time we are finished, you are going to understand exactly what the 7 signals look like, and you are going to recognize the ones that arrived in your own week. You are going to understand the science behind why the channel between you and the divine has felt thin, and what has actually been causing that. You are going to hear what God is actively declaring over your life right now, in 3 very specific areas. And before I close, I am going to speak something over you that I believe has been waiting for exactly this moment. Everything here is worth staying for. Stay all the way through. And one more thing before we begin. Everything I am about to share in this message is completely free. But if at any point something stirs inside you and tells you there is more you need, something that goes beyond what words can carry, the information for that is in the description below and in the pinned comment. You do not have to do anything with it right now, only if you feel led. Okay, let me start with the first one. The first of those 7 moments arrived in your body. It was in the tiredness that could not be explained by anything you had actually done. Not the tiredness of a hard week, not the kind that lifts after a good night of sleep. Something heavier than that. Something that sat in the back of your chest and behind your eyes, and stayed there no matter how much rest you managed to get. You may have made a list of reasons. You may have told yourself it was the season, or the pressure, or everything stacking up at once. And every reason felt plausible, and none of them felt quite right. This is not burnout. This is your body, carrying a spiritual weight. It was never designed to process alone. Your body knows something. Your mind has been too busy to register. What it knows is that something significant has been pressing on you from the inside, asking to be acknowledged, asking to be received. The second arrived in the repetition. It was in the word that kept coming from places that had nothing to do with each other. The same phrase from someone you spoke to, then the same phrase in something you read, then someone said it again in a conversation that had no connection to the first 2. Or a name that kept arriving in your thoughts without any invitation, or a feeling that kept returning to the same specific thing no matter how many times you set it down and walked away from it. This is not coincidence. The divine does not leave messages in single sentences. It repeats, it circles back. It sends the same signal through different channels until the receiver recognizes the frequency. The third arrived in the pulling away. It was in the changed tolerance, in the room that felt manageable a few months ago and now feels like something is wrong at a frequency you cannot name. The conversation that used to be easy now costs something before it even ends. The environment that once fit you has stopped fitting, and you keep trying to adjust yourself back into a shape you have already grown out of. You are not becoming difficult. You are becoming discerning. There is a difference between those two things, and understanding that difference may be one of the most important things you take from this message today. Stay with me here, because the next two are the ones most people miss entirely. The fourth arrived in the dark. It was in the waking, that specific hour, sometime between 2 and 4 in the morning, when sleep ended before it should have, and something was present when you opened your eyes. Not fear exactly, though that word is the easiest one to reach for. Something else. A weight that was both heavy and clarifying at the same time. An alertness that felt like it came with something attached, something that wanted to be received if you would just stay still long enough to let it land. Your body is not malfunctioning in those moments. Your receiver is active. Something is broadcasting, and the deepest part of you knows how to wake up for it, even when the rest of you has no language for what is happening. The fifth arrived in the timing. It was in the moment, when the right word came from the right person, at exactly the right second, and there was no reasonable explanation for how it worked out that way. The call that came when the decision could not wait another day. The thing someone said in passing that landed like it was said directly to you, for you, about the exact thing you had been holding in silence for weeks. This is not luck. Luck is random. Luck does not know what you have been carrying in private. Luck does not send the answer before you have spoken the question out loud. This is orchestration, and orchestration requires an orchestrator. And I hear the Father saying to the one who just recognized themselves in those 5 signs, I was there. I was in every one of those moments. I did not pull back when the week got heavy. I was speaking in the language I knew. Your body and your spirit would eventually recognize, because I have been speaking to you long enough to know which doors you leave open, even when you think they are all closed. Let me pause here for a moment. You have been listening carefully, and I want to notice that with you before we go any further. The fact that you are still here, still receiving, still leaning in after everything life has given you reason to lean away from, that is not a small thing. That is the posture of someone who has not given up on what they were made for, even when giving up would have been the easier choice. Take one breath before we continue, not to do anything with it, not to release something or receive something or arrive somewhere, just to be here for one breath, with exactly what is true right now. Okay, what I want to show you next changes everything about how those 5 signals make sense, because recognizing the signal is only half of what matters. The other half is understanding why it took this long to hear it clearly. And when you understand that, the silence of the past season will never feel the same again. There is a man in the oldest texts who understood what 7 felt like. His name was Elijah, and when we find him in this particular moment, he had just done something that by all appearances should have settled everything. He had stood on a mountain called Carmel and called down fire from heaven in front of hundreds of witnesses, and the fire had come. It was the kind of moment that should have made doubt impossible. But after the fire, the drought was still there. 3 years of silence from the sky, and Elijah knelt down on that same mountain, his face pressed toward the earth, and prayed for rain. Then he sent his servant to go look toward the sea. The servant came back. Nothing, he said. Go again, Elijah said. 6 times the servant returned with the same report. 6 times Elijah said, go back. And somewhere between the 6th and the 7th look, something could have broken. Something in him could have said, I have asked enough. I have waited long enough. But Elijah said, go again. On the 7th look, the servant came back with something different. A cloud, the size of a man's hand, barely visible on the horizon. By the time Elijah stood up, the sky had changed. I believe your week has looked something like Elijah's 7 looks. And the reason you are here receiving this message is that God has not stopped sending. But here is the harder question. Why has the receiving been difficult? Because I want to be honest with you about this. It is not about your faith. It is not about how consistently you have shown up. or how many prayers you have offered, or how sincere your wanting has been. What I am about to tell you goes much deeper than any of that. In the original Hebrew, the language in which Elijah's story was first spoken aloud, the word for 7 is Sheva. But Sheva is not simply a number. It comes from a root that means to be full, to be complete, to seal something by oath. When God counts to 7 in the original language, he is not counting, he is sealing. He is declaring that what he is doing is whole and finished and complete. What happened to you this week was not 7 random moments. It was a sealed message, a completed sending, and the seal was placed on it before you ever heard a single one of those signals. Now here is the part that changes the entire story. The reason the message has been difficult to fully receive has a scientific explanation, not a spiritual one, not one that lives in the language of faith and doubt and effort. When you were very young, your brain operated at a specific frequency, a God-given state of heightened perception, deep intuition, and what the ancient texts describe as wisdom. Scientists who have spent decades measuring brain activity with equipment that tracks electrical patterns in real time can document this state. They can observe it in children before the age of 7, and they can map exactly what it enables: the capacity for rapid learning, the openness to receive, the intuition that seems to know things before they happen, the creativity that does not require effort to access. But something begins to happen around that age, not all at once, gradually. The way a radio signal loses clarity as you drive further from the tower. The structure of modern life, the education system, the noise, the constant pressure to produce and perform and keep pace with everything pressing in from the outside, slowly suppresses that frequency. Researchers have documented this pattern across decades of study. They call it the decline effect. And it has nothing to do with faith. It has everything to do with what happens to the brain over time. The silence you have been experiencing is not God going quiet. It is your receiver losing sensitivity to the channel he has always been broadcasting on. A neuroscientist named Dr. Robert Lake has spent more than 3 decades studying exactly this. And what he discovered is not simply that the frequency can be restored. It is that there is a specific sequence for doing it, a series of carefully mapped steps that he spent the better part of his life working out, one that begins in a very particular place. He has organized the arc of this work under names that will become familiar to you over time, the youthful brain among them. But what he returned to, again and again, as the necessary beginning, the entry point for everything else, is what I want to share with you now. And this is where I want to pause for just a moment, because what I am about to tell you briefly, I will come back to in full. Dr. Lake developed a tool based on this research, a precision-engineered audio technology that uses a technique called brain entrainment to guide your brain gently back to the frequency it was designed to operate on. He called it the Genius Song, 7 minutes. Listened to through headphones. No meditation required. No practice, no prior experience. If your spirit is already telling you that this is what you need, the details are in the description below and in the pinned comment. You do not have to act on it right now, only if you feel led. But if you already know, the door is there. For those who are staying, I want to continue. Because the signals you received this week, all 7 of them, are not just God trying to get your attention. They are the opening notes of something he has been building in you. And what comes next is the part most people only understand after the season has already passed. What God has been declaring over your life, your relationships, and your calling in this season is something I want to show you before it becomes history. Stay with me. Welcome back, chosen one. If you carried anything from the first part of this message into this one, hold on to it. The 5 signals you recognized. The picture of Elijah looking 7 times toward a horizon that had nothing to offer until it did. The understanding that the silence was not absence but interference in a channel that has always been active. Because what I want to show you now is what was on the other side of the interference. A woman once told me she had felt spiritually numb for close to a full year. She kept going to the places she was supposed to go, saying the things she was supposed to say, going through the motions of a faith she genuinely believed in, but could no longer feel in any way she could honestly describe. And she said the hardest part was not the numbness itself. The hardest part was pretending it was not there. Then one week, she stopped expecting God to speak in the language she had been trained to recognize. She stopped waiting for the undeniable moment and started paying attention to the texture of the ordinary days she had been moving through. And what she found that week was not a vague sense of peace. It was a declaration, something specific, something that had her name on it. That is what I want to walk you through now. What God has been declaring over you in this season is moving in 3 specific directions at the same time, and I want to take you through each one carefully. The first direction is your relationships. For those entering this season, here is what is shifting. Some of the connections that have felt solid are beginning to loosen, and this is not punishment, and it is not abandonment, and it is not evidence of something you did wrong. There are people in your life whose assignment to you has reached its natural end, and what looks from the inside like distance or drift is actually release, the gentle untethering of something that has done what it came to do. It will hurt in ways that feel personal. You will review the conversations, looking for the thing you said or did not say that caused this. Do not chase what is departing, and do not spend your energy explaining yourself to everyone watching. Here is what is also true, and what is harder to see from inside the shift. Just when the circle feels smallest, just when the quiet becomes loud enough to make you question everything about your own worth and your own path, the people who were assigned to the next chapter will appear. Not the ones who knew you before, the ones who know who you are becoming, the ones who speak your language, the language you have not been able to use freely in a long time, because the people around you have not had ears for it. Trust what is being rearranged. The second direction is your purpose, something you have been circling for a long time, something you keep returning to and setting down and returning to again. A door is opening that is going to require a decision. And the decision does not need to be perfect. It does not need to come with a complete plan or full certainty or the total absence of doubt. The calling does not wait for certainty, it waits for availability. For those entering this season, you will feel simultaneously ready and terrified, and both of those things will be true at exactly the same time. The readiness is real, the fear is also real, and neither of them is the final word on whether you move. Do not wait for the fear to leave before you take the first step. What you have been circling is not your imagination, it is your assignment, and it has been patient with you for a long time. The third direction is your inner frequency. The receiver that has been quiet is being tuned, not all at once, not in a single dramatic moment of restoration, but gradually, 1 degree at a time. You will notice it as brief windows, moments of unexpected clarity that arrive without warning and pass before you can fully hold on to them. A few seconds where the noise drops and something underneath it is suddenly, unmistakably audible. Those windows are not accidents, and when the noise returns, as it will, that is not failure. That is what recalibration looks like from the inside. The dial is turning. Every window of clarity, however brief, is evidence that the channel exists. You have not lost it. You are finding your way back. And the woman I mentioned at the beginning of this part, the one who went a full year feeling nothing, the week everything shifted for her, she described it exactly this way. She said she stopped expecting thunder and heard something she had never noticed before. A quiet that had been speaking all along. She said it did not feel like a miracle. It felt like coming home. But here is where I need to be honest about something. Because everything I just described, the relationships releasing, the purpose calling, the frequency clearing, there is something in a lot of you that heard all of that and immediately said, but what if I am imagining it? What if the signals were just a week? What if I read meaning into things because I needed to find meaning, not because the meaning was actually there? What if I let myself believe this, and then nothing changes, and 6 months from now, I am standing in exactly the same place, having trusted something that turned out to be the echo of my own longing? I want to sit with that question, because that question deserves more than a quick dismissal. That doubt is not a character flaw. It is scar tissue. It is the residue of every time you believed with everything you had, and the breakthrough did not arrive on the schedule you needed. It is the sound of prior disappointment talking, and it speaks in your own voice so convincingly that distinguishing it from your actual knowing can be nearly impossible. But here is what I need you to understand. That voice is not telling you the truth about what is happening now. It is telling you the history of what has happened before. And those are not the same thing. Underneath the doubt, there is something older and harder to look at directly. The fear of opening again. Not the fear of failure exactly, but the fear of what it would mean to genuinely receive something significant. Because receiving changes you, and change means losing the shape you have grown comfortable in, even when that shape has been keeping you smaller than you were made to be. That fear is not weakness. It is the awareness of someone who understands the weight of what is being offered. The ones who receive carelessly are the ones who cannot hold what arrives. Your reverence for this moment, even when it looks like hesitation, is actually evidence that you are ready. So, here is what I want to say to you directly. You are allowed to need more than one sign. You are allowed to carry the doubt and still receive. You are allowed to trust the recognition in your body, even when your mind is still composing its objections. You are allowed to believe that what happened to you this week was not constructed by your own need for it. You are allowed to protect what is being built in you right now, even if you cannot fully describe it to anyone else yet. And you do not owe anyone an apology for choosing to receive what was sent for you. The interference is real. I am not asking you to pretend it is not. But God broadcasts through it anyway. 7 times, He pushed past the static. And before I show you the full picture of what He has provided for clearing that static, there is one thing I need to tell you about what Dr. Lake discovered that you may not be aware of. Because it is not only that the frequency can be restored, it is what becomes available on the other side of that restoration that changes everything about the 7 signals you received this week. Stay with me. We are almost there. Let me bring together what we have covered before we continue. At the heart of everything in this message is one simple truth. You have been receiving signals from something far greater than your circumstances. Those signals have been real. The reason they felt unclear, the reason the channel has felt thin, is not a faith problem. It is a frequency problem, and frequency problems have solutions. What we have walked through today, 5 of the 7 signals God sent to you this week, the science behind why the receiver goes quiet over time, 3 specific areas of your life where something is being declared and actively rearranged right now, and the obstacles that have kept the channel from fully clearing. This message was not placed in front of everyone. It was placed in front of you. A chosen one, in a specific season, with a specific receiver that is in the process of being tuned. What comes next is for the ones who are ready to accelerate that process. You were not born ordinary. I want to be precise about what I mean by that, because this is not meant as flattery. It is the specific reason why the decline effect has hit you more acutely than it hits most people. The research shows that children begin with gamma activity that varies significantly from person to person, and the ones who carry the highest levels at birth, the ones who learn fastest, feel most deeply, and carry intuitions that nobody else in the room can account for, are the ones who feel the most profound loss when that frequency goes quiet. The gap between who you were at 7 years old and who you have been operating as in recent years, that specific ache, that specific sense of something dormant that belongs to you and is waiting to be reclaimed, that is the gap that Gamma left behind when the decline effect took hold. That is why what I am about to share was designed specifically for someone like you. Earlier in part 1, I mentioned the genius song. I want to come back to it now and walk you through the full picture of what it actually does. A growing body of peer-reviewed research, including data gathered across laboratories at MIT, Princeton, and several other leading research institutions, has confirmed something that was once considered too simple to be real. The brain's electrical frequency can be directly influenced by specific patterns of sound. This is called brain entrainment. And what researchers found when they applied entrainment technology specifically to gamma frequencies was not a subtle effect. People who had been operating in a low-frequency state for years showed measurable gamma activity within the first few minutes of a single session, not after months of discipline. Within the session itself, Dr. Lake spent more than 3 decades mapping this, and what he built is not an ambient soundtrack. It is a precision-engineered audio technology, 7 minutes long, that uses documented principles of brain entrainment to guide your receiver back to the state it was designed to operate from. Over 18,000 people have used it now. And what stands out about that number is not the size of it. It is that fewer than 4% of those 18,000 people asked for their money back. In a space where digital products routinely see return rates of 15 to 20% or higher, that figure tells you something real about what is actually happening for the people who use this consistently. I also want to be honest about what to expect, because expectation management is something most people do not receive, and it matters enormously. For the majority of people who use this, the first noticeable shift tends to arrive somewhere between 11 and 21 days of daily use. For roughly 20%, something begins to register much sooner, sometimes within the first session or two. For a smaller group, closer to 15%, the shift takes 30 days or more. That is not the tool failing. That is a receiver that has been quiet for a long time, needing a longer window to recalibrate. It is not a pill that works in 20 minutes. It is a reconditioning process. And reconditioning has its own pace. Let me tell you about someone whose story has stayed with me. She was 38 years old when she first tried this. She had spent years genuinely searching, meditation retreats, yoga practice, every form of spiritual seeking she could find, and always with the same result. The door felt like it was right there, but something was blocking the way through. She was not skeptical. She was tired. She tried the Genius song not because she believed it would work, but because she had run out of approaches that she trusted. 2 weeks later, she sent a message, and she used one word to describe what had changed: synchronicities. She said the world started speaking in a language she recognized, not louder, not more dramatically, just clearly. For the first time in years, she could hear what had always been there. Now, I want to address something directly before we go any further, because a number of you have already thought it. You have tried things before. Many of them did not deliver what was promised, and that history makes this feel like one more item in a long list of attempts that cost you something without giving back what they took. I understand that, and the empathy I have for that is genuine, not performed. But here is the mechanical difference, because this is not a motivational distinction. Every approach to spiritual and mental clarity that you have tried, meditation, visualization, breath work, even disciplined prayer, asks your brain to change itself from the inside. It requires the receiver to adjust its own frequency through sustained effort over time. That is a real path. It is just slow, and it requires a consistency that is genuinely difficult to maintain when life is already pressing in from every direction. Brain entrainment does not ask your brain to change itself. It provides the external frequency signal that your brain then follows. The way a tuning fork causes the instruments around it to match its pitch, not by instruction, not by effort, simply by the presence of the correct frequency. Your brain is not working to get there. It is being guided there by the input itself. That is a categorically different mechanism, and it is why the research produces the results it produces. And I would never speak to you dismissively about money, because I know that for many of you, what you have is not unlimited, and every decision about how to spend it carries weight. So before I tell you anything about the cost, I just want to say, I hear that. And what I am about to share is something you can evaluate with that reality fully intact. A single session with a licensed therapist costs somewhere around $150 on average. A monthly subscription to a major mindfulness application runs about $15. A weekend spiritual retreat with a qualified teacher starts at $400 and goes considerably higher. Not one of those options was designed to address the specific mechanism that the decline effect research points to. Each offers something real. None of them are targeting gamma frequency directly. Dr. Lake compressed 34 years of neuroscience research into a 7-minute audio file. The original price was $49. For the audience receiving this message, the price is $39. That is not a promotional event. It is a decision Dr. Lake made about the people he wants this to reach. And that $39 comes with considerably more than the audio itself. There is a 6-minute companion track designed specifically for children, calibrated to the brain before the decline effect fully sets in, valued separately at $19. There is the foundational book that the film most people know as The Secret drew its core principles from. The original text focused on real and practical financial principles, currently valued at $20. There is a 22-minute guided visualization that walks through 4 domains of life: finances, relationships, health, and purpose. A tool that normally sells for $29. And there is a practical reference guide documenting the 5 daily habits of people who have successfully maintained gamma reactivation over time, valued at $12. That is, $80 in additional material, included with a $39 purchase. And one more thing that changes the nature of this offer entirely. The guarantee is 90 days, unconditional. If this does not deliver, you receive a full refund, and you keep everything. The bonuses are yours regardless of what you decide after 90 days. Dr. Lake frames that as an acknowledgement of your time, not a consolation prize. The only scenario in which you lose anything by trying this is the one where you choose not to try. Phase 1 is priced the way it is because Dr. Lake designed the entire restoration sequence with access in mind. Each phase that follows carries its own pricing, not because of hierarchy, but because each one involves a different technology and a different depth of work. What matters right now is the first door. And the first door is $39. Now, before I give you the information, I want you to do one thing. Take one breath. This is not a question about $39. Let the money question step aside for just a moment. This is a question about whether you believe that what was placed inside you before you arrived here is worth the effort of receiving it. Whether the version of you that hears clearly, that moves with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing the signal is real and you are tuned to it, whether that version of you is someone you are ready to take one step toward. If yes, your spirit already knows what to do. For those who feel led, the full details for the Genius song are in the description below and in the pinned comment. Take your time, investigate only, if this is your moment. And after today, the sequence Dr. Lake mapped out will continue to unfold for those who walk through the first door. Not all at once, one phase at a time, as each one takes root and prepares the ground for what follows. The depth of what he built is not something that can be received in a single sitting, because that is not how restoration actually works. Today is the beginning. For the ones who are ready for what comes after the beginning, what arrives next will feel exactly like something you have been waiting for without knowing you were waiting for it. Now let me speak something over you. God tried 7 times this week because you are someone worth pursuing 7 times. Not because your faith has been without gaps. Not because your consistency has been everything it could have been. But because something was placed inside you before you arrived in this world, something that does not expire, something that does not diminish based on your performance or your doubt, or the length of the silence you have been living in. What felt like silence this week was signal. What felt like absence was arrangement. What felt like distance was preparation. What felt like the end of the seventh look was actually the moment the cloud appeared on the horizon. And I hear the Father saying to the chosen one who has stayed all the way to this part of the message, I did not pursue you this week out of desperation. I pursued you because what I placed inside you belongs to what I am doing in the world right now. Not eventually, not one day. Now. You are not waiting to become ready. You are already in the becoming. And I have sealed the message to you with the signature I use when something is whole and complete and finished. 7. It is done. It is sealed. Receive it. Now let me ask you to do one more thing before we close. Close your eyes for just a moment, wherever you are. You are not performing anything or arriving anywhere. You are simply receiving. Take one slow breath in, and as you hold it for just a second, picture the 5 signals from this week, not as a list, as 5 small lights, each one placed in a moment you almost moved past without stopping. Some of them you recognized. Some of them you are recognizing right now for the first time. Exhale, and as you exhale, let the weight of 7 attempts settle into your chest, not as pressure, as presence, as evidence that something was sent for you and found you, and that you are here, which means it landed. The frequency is active. The receiver is awake. What happens next is not something you manufacture through effort. It is something you receive through availability. Let me speak something over your life before you go. I want to acknowledge where you have been. You came to this message carrying something. You may not have had a name for it when you arrived. The weight of a week that asked more than you had ready to give. The quiet that had been sitting in a part of you that you had stopped checking on because checking on it had started to hurt. Right now, all across the world, others are sitting with exactly what you have been carrying. Chosen ones who received the same 7 signals this week and are only now beginning to name them. You are not alone in this. I want you to picture the weight you brought into this message. The doubt, the disappointment, the residue of every time you believed, and the confirmation did not come on the timeline you needed. Picture it the way you would picture something physical, something you have been holding in both hands for a long time. Let your hands open, not by force, not by willpower. As an act of recognition, the signal has arrived, the message is received. There is nothing left that requires that grip. Let it fall. You are reached for. You are pursued. You are chosen. You are not someone God tried once and set aside. You are someone God counted to 7 for, sealed the message to, and sent across the ordinary texture of a week that now means something different than it did when it started. You are committed to something greater than you have yet been able to fully see. You are commissioned by the same hand that set Elijah's rain in motion after 3 years of complete drought. And I hear the Father saying, one more time, to the one who received this today, I brought you here. I was in every one of the 7 moments, and what I have started in you is not finished. You are not standing at an ending. You are standing at the place where what I placed inside you finally begins to become visible to the world. Do not draw back from that. Step into it. For those who followed the link in the description today, after your order is complete, what comes next is a second door that Dr. Lake designed as the next step in the sequence. It will appear briefly. Take a few seconds with it, with an open heart and no pressure at all. Whatever you choose is honored. Both choices are the right choice for the person who makes them. But if something in you recognizes it, something that feels less like surprise and more like inevitability, that recognition is worth trusting. And for every chosen one who is in the process of restoration, there will come a time in the journey, after the receiver has been tuned and the foundation has settled, when the question becomes not just how to hear clearly, but how to walk in what you hear. What some have described, in the language Dr. Lake uses for this deeper phase, as destiny's embrace. That conversation is not for today. Today is the first door, but it is worth knowing the door exists. Amen. It is sealed. If this message landed somewhere real for you today, if you recognized yourself in even one of the 7 signals, leave the word 7 in the comments right now. That is all. Just 7. Let that be your acknowledgement that the message arrived. And if something shifted while you were here, if something that felt heavy when you arrived feels different now, the like on this video is a small gesture that this space is worth returning to. There is someone in your life right now who has been unusually quiet, someone who has stopped explaining themselves, someone who is still showing up but feels far from something they cannot name. This message was made for them too. Share it with them, because you may be their 7th attempt. Stay with this channel. What is coming next is part of the same message, and the ones who stay will understand, when it arrives, why the timing matters.